Okay guys, before we get started on the video, real quick, I got a question for you. Which one is better? Is it going to be Chipotle or is it going to be Freebirds? A certain somebody I know insists that Freebird is better. I'm not buying it, so tell me about it. Now, let's get started with the video. Okay, welcome back everybody. Brian is trying desperately to be off the camera, but he's not going to make it. So, this week we have some news and some more news, and as you may be able to see here, we started putting the rest of the sheet metal back on the car. So I'm going to be moving out of this house in the very near future, and that is potentially going to slow things down here on the channel. But have no fear. I am going to move all of my junk into a shop temporarily while my new house is being built. Now, time for the news on the car. Okay, so the reason why we're putting the sheet metal on, it's a little bit premature, but there is a reason for it. We got to put the doors and the fenders on so I can have the front end on and off the car while I'm fitting the intercooler. Now, some of you may have caught on to that earlier, what I was talking about in previous videos, but I'm going to show you what we're going to do. Okay, so now, here's where the story begins. I've used these cheap eBay intercoolers in the past, had great luck, had many cars make well over 1,000 horsepower with them, with the 4-inch core and the 4-inch inlet. This particular car setup, whatever you want to call it, is probably going to make in the neighborhood of 1,500 horsepower, so just guessing. So rather than try to get by with a single 4-inch core, in typical fashion, the way I do things, I'm going to do it as hard as possible. The hardest possible way you could imagine. I'm going to use two 3-inch cores and put them together. So the way we're going to do that is take these two intercoolers that you see here, and I think you can see that on the screen. We're going to cut the tanks off of both of them, and now I've gone to the sheet metal place and I had these formed, and so these will be the new tanks, and they're going to get welded across it just like that. So nothing to it. It's actually going to turn out to be really cool. Have no fear. So that is why the giant cutout in the bumper a few videos back, explaining how the intercooler was going to sit and all that jazz. Also, I got the upper intake formed at the same time. So this, some of the OGs may remember, this is the upper intake that was on the blue car, and it faced backwards because it had air to water inside the car. So in order to keep from redoing the intake and all the extra nonsense, we're going to change it to this. So this will be the upper intake manifold now, and you can definitely see the shape of that. The throttle body is going to point out the front of the car. This has some trimming to be done to it, and it may or may not fit into the stock hood. The goal is to make it fit into the stock hood. We're just going to see how it works. Okay, so I'm about to get started cutting the tanks off of the new intercoolers. I'm not totally convinced that I'm going to use that upper intake arrangement that I had shown you earlier in this video. I may do some kind of temporary deal with the existing elbow that I had, just to get it running real quick, especially with this deal going on with the house and potentially having to move really fast and all that. So anyways, let's get started cutting those intercoolers up and finally do something. Alright, we got one of the cast tanks cut off of it. So now we're going to see what kind of effort it's going to take to get the remaining part of that tank off of there. Alright, I got the tanks cut off of it, and it worked exactly like I thought it was going to. All I did was I cut the tank, and I left about 3/4 of an inch gap, and then I went in and I cut a little slot in a few places, and I took a crescent wrench, put it on there, and just broke the weld, and it was really that easy. So now you get a little better idea of what these tanks are going to look like. So they just go on there like that, and then put it in the car. And magic happens and all that kind of stuff. So now I'm going to kind of dress it up a little bit with a grinder and probably tack the tanks to it and test it in the car and see how it looks. Alright, next step we had to take care of is getting these intercooler tanks to fit. So we had clearance cut in the side right here for the headlights. They were 4 inches tall, so we cut them down to 3 like this. You can see that this side hadn't been cut yet. So I'm going to go ahead and cut. This is the last one. We'll get it cut. Plasma cutter cuts like a razor blade. When you got a straight edge, you just move nice and easy with it. Alright, there's the tanks shortened up this way. Angle cut on the top for the headlights, or the headlight buckets to clear. That'll make more sense here in a little bit. Let's get them tacked on the intercooler cord. Alright, so I did a little skipperoonie on you guys. I got the tanks tacked on. I got the caps put on the top. And now I'll go ahead and weld that stuff up. Maybe weld part of the tanks. We'll test fit it in the car, kind of see how everything looks, and then we'll kind of go from there. Okay, so shortly after I showed you that video where I was doing the welding on the intercooler and all that jazz, I made a big boo-boo. I had pressure tested the intercooler and went to weld up a couple of little pinholes in it. And in all my infinite wisdom, got carried away and ended up putting a hole through a part of the core that could probably be repaired, but it's not something that I want to jack around with. I don't have a lot of money tied up in that thing, so I'm going to scrap that project and continue on what I'd originally planned on, which is just simply running the tube out of the turbo and straight to the intake. Now I'm going to run it in a manner where I can add an intercooler later on down the road without doing a whole bunch of work, and I probably will do that. So we're going to go on to that part of the project right now. Okay, so I went in, I had to do a cutout in the frame so the cold pipe can come down through here. It's going to go across. It's going to come back up on the other side exactly the same way. And then let's look at the engine bay and see what we're working with. Okay, so it looks like that window's kind of bright in the background. Well, don't look over there. Look over here, right here. So this intake, the upper part of the intake manifold, is off of the original setup out of the blue car. And I am going to repurpose as much of that as I can right now, so I don't have to change a lot of stuff around. So the upper intake that I showed you earlier in the video, I think, or maybe even on Instagram, I'm not going to use that yet. So this particular piece is going to go over into the fender, drop down across exactly like the driver's side. It's just going to be a mirror of it. That way, if I want to add an intercooler at some point, I still can do that. So we're going to continue on making the cold pipe. All right, I got most of the cold side built. I didn't record a lot of that, but I'm getting near the completion of that. So the last thing that's left to do is I got to add a piece in here. So I'm going to cut it at the weld and make this one piece instead of two welds so close together. After we weld all the joints together, I'll take it and I'm going to cut it again somewhere over here, so that when we're doing work on the engine, I need to take this pipe out. There's not any of it hanging out in the engine bay in the way. So I'm still pissed about screwing the intercooler up, but oh well, such is life. Okay, first off, my apologies for taking the better part of 3 or 4 weeks to get a video out to you guys. It's been kind of crazy here with the house being for sale, and my time in the garage is limited because it seems like there's always somebody coming and going when I have time to be out here and doing this stuff. So, yeah, that's it. New place coming up. Cold side is complete. Everything is done with the exception of the meth injection nozzles that I don't have yet. Everything's welded up, just ready to rock. So, tell me what you think. Also, be sure to comment down below. Tell me what you think about the Chipotle and Freebird thing. I think that's, you know, Chipotle's going to win that hands down. But hey, that's just my opinion. Anyways, be sure to give the video a thumbs up, comment, and share it with your buddies. Subscribe if you haven't, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.